there looking at me. That's a big suck. One's on the roof.
Can you stop trying to finish me and just fight someone else? Hello?
Well, that kind of worked out for me.
Yeah, bitch!
Lol.
This is what you get for.
Welcome back everyone, my name is Nihil and I'll be your Apex coach, but feel free to call me Dan. Last week we talked about figuring out a long-term goal for us to work towards and how much time you'd like to dedicate in your day-to-day gaming to reach that goal. Especially mechanical skills such as aim, movement, visual acuity or reaction time, consistent daily practice is key to improving as quickly as possible. Now for those of you that play a decent amount already, how you spend your time is more important than how much time you spend. So if you haven't watched that episode yet, I highly recommend you pause the video right here and come back after catching up. So now that we know how much time we're going to commit, we want to turn this into a practice routine that actually helps us improve faster. Having a habitual routine helps you stay focused, disciplined, and allows you to evaluate your process. Now because everybody's schedule is different, we're going to create some example routines with varying levels of time commitment that you can easily repeat every day. To do that, we have to go through the things you could be spending your time on to increase how much you can learn every day. So let's say I've decided I'm going to spend 4 hours after dinner playing Apex until I reach Masters. Time to open the game. And now what? I could just play and I'd surely improve over time, but our goal is to make sure we learn as much as possible from every game we play. To do that, there are several methods I could use to enhance my learning experience, and the primary ones to know are preparation, warm-up, practice, evaluation and analysis. First up, preparation. Preparation is the setup phase at the start of your practice session. It's what we do leading up to actually jumping into the game. You want to take a couple minutes to prepare for your games, to ensure that you stay on track and to have a way to evaluate your progress afterwards. Basically, before you start playing, you want to know what you're actually going to practice today. Now as you prepare, you have two objectives. The first is ensuring a consistent environment, and the second is setting a focus for your upcoming games. And that's really how simple preparation is. So for me, to get the most out of my 4 hours after dinner, this includes walking the dog and making sure that the kid's doing homework. That's so I know I won't be interrupted. Then I make sure I've eaten, I've grabbed my coffee, and I won't need a break for that, or forget to eat. Now while I grab my coffee and eat some food, I go over the notes on my phone to see what I'm supposed to be focusing on today. And then, after all that, I finally sit down at my PC, I stretch my arms, my hands and my fingers and place my peripherals in chair the exact same way every time. This is called the neutral position. Your neutral position should be comfortable for a long session, easily repeatable the next day, and allow you to comfortably aim, move and see your screen. Lastly, it should include a posture that prevents hurting your back, neck, shoulders or wrist. Now how you like sitting is up to you, but try to make sure you always reset to your neutral position when you sit down to play. The posture and setup that's most comfortable is entirely unique for everyone, but I'll be showing you what it looks like for me and what to look out for when we go over settings and setup soon. Now the preparation phase is a very fast and simple habit, but it's also easily ignored, and it's what separates the dreamers from the achievers. Learning quickly requires you to minimize the impact of anything that isn't your performance. You want to remove randomness from the equation so that the outcome is determined by how well you play. Next up, we need to warm up. Now gaming doesn't require a serious amount of physical strength, but when it comes to FPS games, the outcome can be turned around entirely by the difference of 1 pixel or by being a fraction of a second faster. Warming up is about challenging yourself mechanically, so that you can perform physical actions without mental effort and focus on your surroundings and decision making instead. I mentioned earlier that before I play, I stretch my arms, wrists and fingers to make sure there's no tension in them that will hinder or hurt me when I'm aiming. Warming up should get your hands used to moving the mouse quickly over large distances, as well as slowly and steadily making precise aim movements. While warming up, you also set your frame of reference for your sensitivity, the movement speed in game, weapon mechanics like recoil, hitbox sizes, animations and so on. To warm up fast, you'll want to maximize the time you spend actually fighting, preferably against real opponents. In Apex, given that we don't have a deathmatch or free-for-all mode, 1v1s against an equally skilled or better player are the fastest way to aim as much as possible in a short period of time. Now if you don't have someone to warm up with, hot dropping in regular matchmaking and playing aggressively in the early game rather than focusing on winning can still give you a reasonably quick warm-up. Keep in mind that landing near a team and fighting off the drop is a lot faster than looking for teams to fight. If you die early, you can also just instantly go again, rather than having to wait for another opportunity to fight. So drop so hot you're sweating, die, and repeat. Don't warm up for too long though, that's how you become a TTV Wraith main with great aim but never touching Predator. Remember that the goal of warm-up is to focus only on the physical aspects of playing the game, so that you can focus on other things later. If you keep playing low pressure games where you're focused only on fighting quickly, well, that's all you'll ever get better at. So warm up quickly and then we can get to the main portion of our daily playtime, actual practice. So now we've prepared for what we're going to focus on today, pissed off our teammates by dropping hot and dying, and it's time to actually practice and play. Now, what you're focusing on improving will vary from day to day. You'll often find new things to improve before even mastering what you're working on right now, and you'll find yourself revisiting things you've practiced previously, as they may have slipped or can be improved further. But when it comes to playing to practice, finding the right challenge level is the foundation to consistent improvement that we need to start with. As you might remember, you want to be punished for playing incorrectly to make it easy to identify your mistakes. For example, if you're killed every time you challenge more than one enemy, it won't take long to identify that mistake and focus on improving it the next day. If the challenge level is very high, like a newer silver tier player going into diamond lobbies, you're going to die for making mistakes a lot. This will make it painfully obvious how much you could improve. However, many deaths in those lobbies will simply be a result of being outskilled, which means you'll be punished for things you can't identify or fix alone. You see, if you don't have enough time to process what's happening because the enemy is that much better than you, it's going to be extremely difficult to determine what your mistake was and what the proper response would have been. But more importantly, if you're consistently outmatched, it's going to be extremely challenging to separate avoidable mistakes that resulted in deaths from moments where you played well but didn't execute it well enough. Being able to separate strategy from execution is important to improving your non-mechanical skills. So let's say you took a strong position and played smart, but still lost a fight to an enemy blindly running at you simply because they had far better aim. You may incorrectly assume you made the wrong play, when in reality the problem was in the execution. Similarly, if you're a diamond level player and you're facing opponents of a silver skill level, you may win the fight due to superior mechanics or awareness while being oblivious to the mistakes a better opponent would have identified and used against you. Clearly, this will quickly lead to bad habits, but on top of that, you also don't build the experience of playing against better players. If you want to improve and beat good players, you'll need to become familiar with how they play. Like I mentioned earlier, if you don't have time to process what's happening, you won't be able to learn from it easily. FPS games are usually fast-paced and punishing. Because of that, no matter how good you are, you will be punished too quickly if you get put in an extremely disadvantageous position. A lot of high-level play isn't just about responding correctly because you've practiced and figured out what to do in any given scenario, but it's also about having enough experience against good players to anticipate what they're going to do. In a game like Apex, there's no way you're going to have enough time to set yourself up for success if you have no clue what's coming. So to succeed at a high tier, experience against veteran players is required. Luckily, Apex and most modern FPS games have a built-in way to create a healthy practice environment and almost nobody uses it. It's ranked. Now, many players avoid playing ranked because it's either more challenging, the higher stakes make it stressful, or they don't think they'll rank up due to a lack of skills or teammates or whatever. Now, when a coachee tells me they don't play much ranked because they're hard stuck or don't have a squad, I couldn't be more delighted. That might sound a bit rude, but while most players hate getting stuck at the bottom of a rank, unable to move their RP, it's actually an invaluable gift. You see, if you know you can't win, well, you have nothing to lose. If you know you won't rank up anyway, what's stopping you from practicing in a more challenging environment? If you're willing to play even though you won't gain points, you can use that time to actually play to improve, rather than focusing on efficient point gain. Just focus on winning your fights. You'll fight players of a similar skill level, forcing you to try and play better than you would when you're playing on autopilot. But not just that, both your teammates and the enemies will also be taking the games more seriously, meaning they'll be making more coordinated and thought out plays. So, if your goal is to improve quickly, play more ranked. There's simply no better way to ensure a challenging, learnable environment. Now, ranked anxiety is the most common reason for people to get stuck around a mediocre skill level. They don't believe they're ready to rank up, or they just want to play the game, so they avoid rank. But if you stop focusing on the daily RP gains and losses, and rather just see it as a better game mode to improve quickly, it takes the pressure off of winning or losing. By focusing on how you play rather than the immediate outcome, you're less likely to tilt or stress. and before you know it, the fact that you're actually practicing and getting better at rank will allow you to rank up. Now after your practice, of course, we've got evaluation. You want to stay on track and figure out what you should be working on next time. You're going to want to evaluate how effective your practice was. To do this, it's highly recommended that you record your gameplay. Now on PC, you can use Shadowplay or OBS. For console, there's actually a built-in record feature that you could access via the main menu. I recommend watching a few fights from the session before to figure out what your most common mistakes are, and those are the things you're going to go over during preparation to practice the following day. Now I'd recommend focusing mostly on lost fights or lost games, because there's more to learn from them, and by watching them you're forcing yourself to face your mistakes with a clean, less biased mindset. But make sure to write things down that you're trying to focus on during tomorrow's playtime. And if you can't find mistakes, ask other people to go over your gameplay and give you their perspective. Now you'll want to compare the mistakes you wrote down from your evaluation last time with the games that you played in this session. Be very honest and critical at how effectively you changed your behavior in game. You'll process this in your sleep and continue analyzing, internalizing and trying to fix that mistake until you feel you've improved it enough that something else deserves your attention more. Now, after the next thing you're trying to fix, I always recommend going back and reflecting on whether the previous topic you've worked on hasn't reverted to its original state. If that is the case, it wasn't properly internalized into a subconscious habit yet, and you can give it some extra practice time. Now, when you should go over your own gameplay depends entirely on your schedule. However, when possible, I actually recommend my coaches to review their games and set their goal during the preparation phase, rather than right after a session. You see, if you review games after your session, you're not in a neutral emotional state and your focus is automatically pulled towards whatever held your attention in the moment. By evaluating your gameplay during the preparation phase, not only do you give yourself a more honest and neutral look at your performance, you can also take immediate action on the things you'd like to improve. For most coaches, they rewatch the majority of their fights whenever it's convenient during the day, such as while having lunch. You can rewatch 1 or 2 fights during the prep phase while looking at the mistakes you wrote down from the rest of the VOD. This way, evaluating your performance takes a minimal amount of time out of your practice routine. Aside from looking at your own gameplay, once you've reached the competitive skill level, you can learn a lot from watching not just your games, but better players as well. A lot of gameplay is available from pro players and streamers that can be beneficial to learning and improving at the game once you're at a skill level high enough to understand and mimic the gameplay you see. However, if you're not capable of competing at a similar level of the player you're watching, this step is generally not considered to be beneficial, especially compared to spending that time actually playing the game. How to analyze and learn from VODs, whether they're your own or a third party, is a topic that we're going to have to cover in its own video soon. But for now, I hope I gave you a decent idea of how you should be spending your time every day, and I hope to see you next week for episode number 3.